feeling of realization in that I'm here. I hear you loud and clear. When we get lost in our own minds, you'll be keeping me near.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Captain Drone YouTube channel. My name is Steve and this is episode 15 of FPV for Beginners. Now if you're new to the FPV hobby, this series entitled FPV for Beginners is all made for you. And if you go back to episode 1, which was 100 years ago that I made that, well, it talks about the FPV hobby. And each episode discusses a different topic, so if you're interested in a certain topic in the FPV hobby, go back and check some of those episodes. In this episode, I'm going to show you step by step how to connect your goggles, your Remote 3 or 2, to a brand new professional FPV drone you may have bought off the internet. And not only connect everything, but how to set everything up. So if you're brand new to the FPV hobby, you may want to go buy yourself some DJI FPV Goggles 3. They come in this box, as well as the DJI FPV Remote 3. It comes in this box. Now I got to be clear from the start. In this video, I'm going to be showing the Goggles 3 by DJI, as well as the Goggles N3 by DJI, and the FPV Remote 3. Now please read my lips. I will not be showing you the Goggles 2 or the FPV Remote 2 or even the Goggles Integra in this video. The reason being is those are legacy devices from years ago. So for that reason, I'm only going to stick with the newest devices. In addition, if you bought yourself a professional radio that's ELRS, I'm also going to show that in this video, how to connect it to an ELRS drone while still using DJI goggles. Sounds like a lot, but I'm going to make this very easy step by step. Now, what I'm about to say is going to be one of the most important things in this video. So if you want to buy a professional FPV drone that's on the market today that has the DJI O4 Pro or Lite system in it, and you want to fly that professional drone using your DJI FPV Remote 2 or your DJI FPV Remote 3. The only way that's going to happen is if you buy the drone with a receiver that is plug and play. So when you buy one of these, or any hundreds of drones that have the DJI O4 system in it, you have a choice to pick a receiver. You must pick PNP. If you don't pick PNP, well then, these remotes will not work. Everything DJI makes is for beginners. All their drones are for beginners. So that means when you get this, the joystick over here, it's sitting in the center. There is no such thing as a professional drone in the FPV hobby where the joystick sits in the center. The joystick, that is the throttle, must drop to the bottom. When you buy the Remote 3 in the box, you will get this tool. And this tool is designed to fit into the back of the remote. So if we look at the back of the remote, you have these type of plasticky rubber pads. They come off. Pry the one off that's behind your left joystick over here. Pry it off and you'll find 2 holes. Stick this tool in the holes and turn it. I can't tell you if it's clockwise or counterclockwise because I can't remember. But what you want to achieve is you want to achieve that this joystick just drops. It doesn't stay in the center, it drops. Not only do you want it to drop, but you want it to drop so that when you turn it upside down, you see how the joystick stays there? There's got to be a little bit of friction to it so that it's not flopping around. So I'm not going to show you how to do it. There's a million videos on how to do that, but you need to do that to complete the rest of this video. Now, a radio like this by DJI is usable, but it's not very good. But if you want to use it, you can. I suggest getting a professional radio. This is the most inexpensive one currently. This is the RADIOMASTER POCKET ELRS model. If you buy something like this, or you buy another RADIOMASTER radio, you will have to learn how to set up a model inside the radio and configure all the switches and buttons and dials. If you look up here, I have a video on how to do it with this ELRS version of the Pocket. So if this is the radio you buy, this is the video you want to watch. It'll walk you through step by step how to do everything. Next very important thing to mention, do you see this item? Look at it. This is called the DJI motion controller. It comes in various versions. It is not a device that is used in the real FPV hobby. This is just a product that DJI made because they found from their research that many people could not use 2 joysticks at once and look at an image in their goggles and figure out what they were doing. Therefore, this was created, and it's pretty good. But it doesn't exist in the FPV hobby. So if you have this, throw it away. All right, so let's get started. Now the first thing you're going to need to get started would be one of these, a laptop or a desktop computer. Both are perfectly fine, and it doesn't matter if it's PC or Mac. I use both, but in this video, since I have my PC with me, I'm going to use this one. So the way I'm going to show you what I'm doing is I'm going to take my PC and I'm going to stick it way over here, and then I'm going to put a camera in front shooting at it, and you'll see what I'm talking about as you see me filming the screen. So I have a big massive camera here looking at my laptop, so let's switch to my laptop screen. First thing you want to do is open your browser. The next thing you want to do is go to the DJI Downloads website and download the DJI Assistant for Consumers software. So you can see on my screen, I'm going to select DJI Downloads because I've gone to it in the past, and over here, Download Center, I'm going to click on that. And down here on the left, I'm going to click on software, and I want DJI Assistant 2 series. I'll click on that. Let me just scroll up. And right here is the one you want, DJI Assistant 2 Consumer Drone Series. Click on that. This is it over here. And then I'll scroll down. You can see for Mac, it's version 2.1.35. This is as of today. And for Windows, which I'm going to use, is version 2.1.35. Next, you look down at supported products, and we want to find 04 series right here. DJI 04 Air Unit series. That's the important one, as well as our Goggles N3, as well as even it supports the Goggles Integra. If you look down, we've got the Goggles 3. So you want to download that. So let me go over here and pick a download. It says, do you want an exe file or a zip? This is for Windows. I'll just pick the exe file so it runs right away. Then let's go see the file I downloaded. Right here it says exe. So let's double click on it and install it. So just go through and say yes to everything. Make sure you accept all the terms of agreement. I'm going to have it create a desktop shortcut so I can find it easy after it's installed. Then take a look at your desktop. I'm just going to minimize this. Right here is our software we just installed, DJI Assistant 2. Double click on it. Now, if you don't have a DJI account, you will need to create one. But if you do have one, you can log in with your DJI account. So now that you've installed everything, take your goggles. I have the Goggles 3. If you have the Goggles N3, or you have the Goggles 2, or the Goggles Integra, plug a USB-C cable right here into this side and plug the other end into your laptop or PC and watch what happens. So here we go. I've plugged in a USB-C cable. Now I am going to power these on. I forgot to tell you to power them on. So press once, press a second time and hold. They're on. You see the green lights here? They're on. Now take this other end and plug it into your PC or computer and watch what happens. So down here, I'm about to plug this in. There we go. Let's see what happens on the screen. This should move over to there. And up here it says, hey, you have the Goggles 3. So we're going to double click on that. And over here it's going to tell me which firmware is on the Goggles 3. What you want is this top one where it says here, you want to go across and it says official. And you want to make sure it says you have the most current version. So right now it says refresh, which means I have the most current version. If you don't have the most current version, it's going to say something else, and it's going to allow you to press on the button that's right here and update the firmware in your goggles. The firmware on your goggles, the firmware in your remote, and the firmware on your drone must all be the same. So right now our goggles are up to date. So I'm just going to hit the back button over here, right over here on the top left, go back, and I'm going to unplug the goggles. Now, just for fun, I'm going to check my Goggles N3 just to see if the firmware is current on these goggles, because I have not used these goggles in quite some time. So let me power them on. Press once, press twice. And then I'll plug the USB-C cable in the top, because that's where the USB-C port is located. Then I'll plug the goggles into the laptop. Let's see what it says on my screen now. So it's gone in, Goggles N3, double click. Let's see what version's on here. Did I update it? Aha, here we go. Good example. So you see, I do not have the latest version. So go over here. It says official, which is correct, but it gives me the option to upgrade. So let's upgrade the firmware on the goggles and you'll see how it does it. So click upgrade, accept everything. So it has to do 3 things when it does an upgrade. First, it goes to the DJI software site and it downloads it to your laptop. Second, it takes it from your laptop and sends it to your goggles or your remote or anything else. And third, on your goggles, it updates. So right now we're doing process 1. It says downloading up here. Now it says transmitting, sending to the goggles. Depending on how fast your PC or computer is, this process may be slow or super fast. And now we're on the last stage where everything's been transmitted to the goggles, and the goggles using its own internal processor will do the update, and now it's at 100% complete. So you hit the back button, top left, And there we go. So unplug it from your computer. So now my Goggles 3 and my Goggles N3 have the correct firmware. And now we'll take the DJI FPV Remote 3, power it on, press once, press a second time and hold it. So we take our USB-C cable, plug it in, and then you have the other end, which is going to go in our PC. So down here in the PC, I'm going to plug this in. Let's see what version we have. So if we look at my screen, I have the most up-to-date firmware because it says official and there's no option to update over here. So it is the most current. The next thing you want to do is take that professional FPV drone that you bought that has the DJI O4 Pro system in it or the DJI O4 Lite system in it. And you want to make sure the firmware on that system is up to date. Now, every drone you buy that has the DJI O4 Lite or Pro system in it will have 2 ports. So this is where a lot of newbies or rookies get confused. One port is for DJI to update the whole video DJI transmission system, and the other port is to update the flight controller. The DJI port will always be a USB-C, and sometimes companies, to keep it simple for people that are rookies or newbies, they will make the flight controller a different type of port, like USB-A or something like that. So I have the GetBarC Cine Log 30, which is an incredible FPV professional drone, and we're going to check and see if we have the most current DJI software on here. So on the bottom, you have 2 little rubber things. One is to access where the micro SD card goes to record video, and the other one is to upgrade the DJI system. So open this one that has the USB-C port, and there's a big USB-C port on there, and I've lost my cable. There it is. So now I'm going to plug in my USB-C port. One thing that you probably notice I'm doing, notice I'm not powering on the drone. I don't have a battery on it or anything. You do not need to add a battery with the DJI O4 system. It will run right off the USB-C power to configure and update firmware. Okay, so now I'm going to plug this into my laptop here. And 2 things you're going to notice. One is that as soon as you plug in your USB-C cable to your PC or Mac or laptop, it's going to access all the video files that you recorded on your micro SD card or on the memory in this system, which is cool because then you can just draw them off there and put them on your PC or whatever. In addition, it's also going to check which firmware is on there. So now, if you look at my screen, right up here, it says DJI O4 Air Unit Pro, because it is the Pro camera. Double click on that. Let's see if we have the latest version. We should, because I just flew this recently and we do. There it is, official, and it doesn't give me the option to update it, so I have the latest version. So at this point of the video, I can get rid of this camera because we are done with the laptop. But don't throw your laptop away or your PC away because you will need it to set up the drone in BETAFLIGHT Configurator, which I'm going to show you after we bind everything. Now we're at the part of the video where you bind everything together, but there's something you need to do first. And what that is to take a look at the drone you bought. You bought yourself a DJI O4 FPV drone in the professional FPV hobby. So take a look. Does it have 2 antennas at the back or 1 antenna? If it's tiny in size, it probably has 1 antenna. If it's large in size, it probably has 2 antennas. 2 antennas means you have the brand new DJI O4 Pro system in it. 1 antenna on a very tiny quad means you have the DJI O4 Air system in it, or some people call it the DJI O4 Lite system in it. The reason you need to know which one you have is because in your goggles, you have to pick the correct transmission system. So to change the transmission system, take the joystick up top and pull it to the right. Goggles have to be on, of course, so I'm going to pull it to the right, and you should see what's going on because I am recording this on my little cell phone. So at the very top of the screen, it says status. Press down, we want to select that, and you see at the top it says DJI O4 Air Unit Pro. That means that these goggles are using the O4 Pro transmission system. But say we had a little drone like this that uses the O4 Lite system. You have to change it to that, so I'll show you how. I'm going to press enter on the little top of the goggles, and these are all the systems you can connect to. But the one you would want is DJI O4 Air Unit. That is for the tiny drones with a little 1 antenna at the back. So make sure you pick the right one before you start. And if you have the DJI Avata or the DJI Neo, look at the screen. You can go back to one of those. You can see if I had a Neo, I would go here and pick Neo. If I had a Avata, I would pick that. It's that simple. So for the purpose of this video, we're going to use the Pro system. So I'm just going to leave it down here on the Pro system, and I'll just cancel this. There we go. All right, so let's bind everything together. You can see the goggles are green right here because I've left them powered on. So these are on, but let's turn these goggles into bind mode. How do you put the goggles into bind mode if you have the DJI Goggles 3? It's pretty simple. You've got them powered on already, so now just press in that power button and do not release it. Watch what happens. I gotta press it in. I'm not releasing it. It's gonna start beeping. That's in bind mode. Now it wants to bind to something. So put your goggles down. Take your DJI FPV Remote 3. Power it on. Once, twice, hold it in. It's gonna power on. Get the green lights flashing. It's not in bind mode until I hold in that power button. So watch this. Hold it in. It's going to start beeping. And they'll both connect. There we go. All those beeps, they are connected. How do I know they're bound together? It's pretty simple. Take a look at this guy. 4 green lights. Take a look at this guy. 4 green lights. And also if I go in the goggles and I go to controller, I will see this guy. So this guy is bound to this guy, but neither of those guys are bound to this guy. We have to bind this one next. Now for this next part, I'm going to attach a battery to the drone I purchased. So this has got the DJI 04 Pro system in it. I'm going to attach a battery so it sends power to the DJI system so that I can bind it to my remote and my goggles. Now everybody's going to tell you to take the props off because if you're a rookie or a newbie, you might do something silly and start up the motors and hurt yourself. So it's good advice, if you are a newbie or a rookie, take the props off. You will also require something very, very pointy. I have a paper clip here. Let me just show you. You can see I have a paper clip. I've just bent it so it's pointy on one end. You need that because you have to poke the bind button on the DJI unit in the drone. So on the DJI 04 Pro system, there's a spot to put your micro SD card. Right above that spot is the bind button. You can barely see it on here. I don't know if you can see it in this image. You'll see the word bind and a spot for your micro SD card. But if you bought something small and tiny that has the DJI 04 light system or air system in it, whatever you want to call it, it actually has a nice little push button that you can press. Let me see if I can show you that. It's pretty small in size, so I don't know if you can see it. I'll have an arrow point to where it is. It's in different spots on different drones, but just look for that push button. That's your bind button. Now you would think you're going to bind your remote to the drone, but no, you bind your goggles to the drone because you've already bound your remote to the goggles. You see how it works in the 04 system? This connects with this, and this connects with your drone. So this is the master system in the DJI 04 system when using this remote. So I'm going to do this really sloppy like. I'm going to take a battery and I'm going to put it in this drone and it will power on. The lights come on. Looks pretty good. We're all set. I already know where the bind button is in here. So it's right where I showed you. You have to take a little paper clip and poke it. Usually it has a red light right beside it. So what you want is the red light to turn flashing red light. So I'm going to press it. And it's a flashing red light. I'll try to get it to show you. These things overheat quickly, but I'll try to show you. There, you should see a flashing red light. That means it's in bind mode. Next, you just take the goggles and you put them in bind mode. Hold down that power button. There we go. It's going to search and it should find. There we go. It stopped. So now these are solid green. This is solid green. This bind light, where are you? I've lost you now. This bind light, if I can find it to show you. There it is. It's going to be solid green as well. There you go. That should be solid green as well. So that means this remote and these goggles all work together. If I look in the goggles, I'll see what's coming, the image coming out of this camera. And if I start flicking switches and buttons on here, this here drone might chop up my fingers because my fingers are through it. So be very careful. And it works the same way if you use the DJI 04 air system. Just remember, you just press the button. Same thing. Now, if you bought yourself a professional radio like this is the RADIOMASTER POCKET ELRS version, and you bought yourself a drone with an ELRS receiver. You know, when you bought it, it said, what type of receiver would you like? And you said ELRS 2.4 or something like that. Then to bind this with this is almost the same way I showed you. So let me just explain. You would take a battery, you would plug it into the drone. Now the drone's powered on. Then you put this ELRS radio into bind mode and you bind it to the drone. And now you're going, how do I do that exactly? Well, what you have to do is say you had this radio. You go watch this video where I show you how to set up a model in here, set up all the switches, the ones you want to use. And in that same video, I show you how to bind this to a drone like this, an ELRS drone of any type. I show you how to do it. So if you go watch that video, you will know how to do it. So now coming back to our drone, you probably noticed that when you flick all these buttons that you were used to in the DJI world, nothing happens on the drone, or even worse, something bad happens on the drone. That's because you have to assign the buttons to a function. And in the FPV hobby, you do that by using a software called BETAFLIGHT CONFIGURATOR. So below this video, I'll put a link to where you can download the software BETAFLIGHT CONFIGURATOR. It's available for your PC or your Mac. So next, I'm going to show you how to use that software to set up this drone in BETAFLIGHT CONFIGURATOR, or any drone for that matter. So this is the part of the video that deals with setting up your radio with your drone in BETAFLIGHT CONFIGURATOR. Now, many of you out there might call these devices in my hand by different names. So myself, being on YouTube, I use all three names whenever I make a video. In other words, I might call these radios, I might call them transmitters, or if you come from the DJI world, you would call these remotes. The correct name, though, if we go way back to old school, is transmitter. That's because they transmit signals, and they transmit those signals to a receiver. And that receiver is in your drone, or in your RC plane, or in your RC helicopter, or your RC car, RC boat, RC tank. See where I'm going? I should also mention the difference between a DJI remote and a professional remote. A DJI remote has all the switches labeled because it's only of use for one type of drone. A professional remote has no switches labeled. It has tons of switches and dials because you can use this with a plane, a drone, a helicopter, a boat, a car, a truck, a tank, all sorts of things. In addition, this remote is a one-trick pony. It has only one type of communication system, whereas this, a professional remote, could have hundreds of types of communication systems, and they are all designed that you can add modules to the rear so you can have different types of communication systems. So say you bought the remote in the year 2023 and now technology's moved on, well, you can buy the new technology in the year 2025 or 2026 and just attach it to the back and you're all up to date. So with all that said, you'll see very few people flying drones in the FPV hobby using this, unless they are people who came from the DJI world and grew up with DJI Mavics. But eventually those people transition over to a professional remote, and as I mentioned from the start of this video, the only reason I'm showing this remote is because it's one of the least expensive remotes with a lot of features. And now let me tell you one more oddity that you must get used to if you use the DJI FPV remote, and that is it has no ability to talk to the receiver in your drone. You're going, what? How is that possible? Then how does it work? It works by using the goggles. So if you use this remote, you're actually talking to the goggles, which are talking to the drone. So that means anytime you see somebody flying an FPV drone with this remote, the goggles are not far away and they are turned on and connected. But if you use a professional remote, well, you connect direct to the receiver in the drone, and these goggles are not required. You can just turn them off, leave them someplace else, and you can go fly the drone with a professional remote. But even with all that said, both of these remotes, radios or transmitters, whatever you wish to call them, function in a similar fashion when it comes to communicating. And I'm going to try to explain it to you in the most simplistic fashion because you need to know this when you get into BETAFLIGHT Configurator. Now, before I show you BETAFLIGHT Configurator, I have to explain how a radio actually functions so it makes sense to you. Let's just say, for simplicity's sake, your throttle control, which is at the bottom, then moves to the top. When it's at the bottom, we're going to call that -100. When it's in the center, we'll call it 0. And when it's at the very top, we're going to call it +100. So what I'm trying to get at is that -100, 0, and +100. There's all these little numbers in between. Those would be called frequencies. And this radio sends out those frequencies to the receiver in the drone. Now, if we took this joystick and we turned it into a three-way switch, you know, with -100 down here, switch, and then 0 in the center and +100 at the top, well, then it would be like a three-way switch on the top. So when this switch is at the bottom position, that's -100. In the center, it's at 0. All the way to the top, That's plus 100. The same is true with a dial. A dial is called a potentiometer. A dial on any sort of radio or remote, you know, when you're flying your DJI drones and you make the camera go up and down, that's a dial, a potentiometer. It's using the same system. So when you move that dial to one side, it's at minus 100. You put it in the center, it's at 0. You move it all the way to the other side, it's at plus 100. And finally, on a radio, you do have buttons. You have them on DJI radios, you have them on other radios. This radio has them as well. You push the button in, that might be minus 100. You push the button out, that might be plus 100. There might not be any 0. The reason I'm telling you this is because when we get to BETAFLIGHT Configurator, I'm going to show you these little yellow bars that you move across the screen. If you move it to one end of the screen, that's minus 100. You put it in the center, that's 0. You move it to the other end, that's plus 100. And those bars match your switches, your dials, your potentiometers. And I don't know if I mentioned this already, but the reason you have to set up a drone in BETAFLIGHT Configurator with whatever radio you use, it is because your drone, let me just pull this drone here, this drone has no idea what radio you are using. You can use any radio in the world. So because of that, it doesn't know what the dials, the switches, or anything else is. If you're flicking switches here, it has no idea what you want them to do. So you have to set that up and configure it in BETAFLIGHT Configurator. And that actually tells the flight controller in the drone what to do. When you push a button, flick a switch, turn a dial, it tells it what to do. Now, because I want to keep this video short, if you have a radio like this and you want to know how to set it up in BETAFLIGHT Configurator, go watch this video here. This is me setting up this radio in BETAFLIGHT Configurator. But for this video, I will show you how to set up the DJI FPV Remote 2 or 3. Now, since DJI has labeled all the switches on here because they only made this for one type of DJI drone, well, then we're going to use the switches with the labels that make the most sense. In other words, to cause these motors to start spinning and stop spinning, I'm going to use the start stop button here. I'm going to configure that so this becomes our start the motors, stop the motors button. In addition, I'm going to set up 3 flight modes because people from the DJI world are kind of used to 3 flight modes. DJI uses 3 flight modes called normal mode, sport mode, and manual mode. They don't exist in the real FPV hobby, but I'm going to set them up as angle mode, horizon mode, and acro mode. And to do that, I'll be using this switch here. So when this switch is all the way up, I'm going to call that angle, in the center, horizon, and at the bottom, that will be acro. So now I will quickly explain the 3 flight modes in the real FPV hobby. First, you have angle mode. Angle mode is not like DJI normal mode. There is a little bit of stability, but you can easily crash the drone because as soon as you let go of the joysticks, it will fall to the ground and destroy itself. That's angle mode. But there is some stability, so you can't flip the drone upside down. It will try to stay level like this as you're flying. The next mode is called horizon mode. Horizon mode is just like angle mode. It's very difficult to tip the drone, but if you move this joystick, the right joystick, all the way to the sides or all the way to the top or the bottom or the other side, well, then your drone, if you do that, is going to flip this way or it's going to flip this way. And when you release the sticks and they come back to the center, your drone will come back to the center. So that's horizon mode. And finally, the last mode is kind of like the DJI manual mode, except on a DJI Avata, when you put it in manual mode, DJI leaves all the sensors still running. You might think they're not running, but they're running, because if you ever try to fly above a certain height, it won't let you. If you ever try to do flips and rolls and do stuff really fast, it won't let you. The sensors are working and they can't compensate for that. But on a true FPV drone, when you put it in something called acro mode, which is like way better than manual mode, well, then there are no sensors running. You have no restrictions. You can fly as fast as you want, as high as you want, do as many twists and twirls and all sorts of weird stuff going through tiny objects. You don't need any GPS, nothing. It works phenomenal. But true acro mode, also called acro air mode, is very difficult to learn how to fly. So if you come from the DJI world and you have experience flying manual mode, you'll do okay flying acro. Now, before we get started, make sure your USB cable you're going to use to connect your drone to your computer for BETAFLIGHT Configurator, make sure it's a data cable, not a charge cable. Second thing is, if you're a rookie, newbie, and this is your first time, take your props off and just keep it safer for yourself, because you are going to attach a battery to the drone. And finally, this is the unfortunate part, The DJI O4 system, it doesn't matter if you have the Pro or the Lite system, it gets hot really fast. And because it gets hot, it overheats. As soon as it overheats, it no longer connects to BETAFLIGHT Configurator. So if you're doing something and things aren't working, it's probably because this has overheated. You'll have to unplug it, cool it off, start over again. And because it overheats, that means it's going to overheat for me while I'm trying to show you something. So I'm going to try to do this in a very unorthodox method. What that means is I'm not going to take a lot of time to explain things. I'm going to run through it quick. So what I would suggest is you take screenshots of my screen that I'm going to show you and set your screen up exactly the same way. So for this portion, I will need my PC again. So you can use your laptop, your Mac, whatever you want. All right, the camera is back and it's facing my laptop screen. So take a look at what it sees. I'll go over here. I have BETAFLIGHT Configurator over here. I'm going to double click, show you what it looks like. So to get started, you'll need your goggles, power them on. Once your goggles are powered on, you don't need them near you. You can just put them away someplace, but leave them powered on. Next, you need to power on your radio. Press once, twice. This radio will connect to the goggles. Now keep this radio nearby. Next, you'll need your drone and USB cable. I'll see if I can come in front of this camera here. So on this drone, the USB flight controller is right at the rear. So the DJI one is on the bottom and this one's in the rear. So you just plug into the rear. You see I have a battery on top. I've left my props on because I've done this a million times. Next, you'll plug in the battery, then everything will start getting hot. So here we go. I'm going to plug in the battery. There we are. She's all set. Then take your USB cable and plug it into your PC or laptop. And watch what happens here. There we go. Now watch what happens with my drone. See, as I move it, it moves on screen. See that light on the bottom? Watch this. I'm going to turn it off using my remote here. There we go. Now, this is BETAFLIGHT Configurator. I'm not going to explain a lot, but take a look. This is the most important side right down here. This is how you set everything up. The first one you want to go to is called Receiver right over here. I'm going to click on Receiver. That's just to make sure your remote is working. So if that's in focus, watch this. If I move the joysticks, all the bars will move as well. That means it's working. Life is good. Next, we're going to go down to modes, and this is where you must copy my screen. So take a look at my screen right here. I'll just explain it. So you see I have 3 big yellow bars, but let's start on the left-hand side really quick. This is arm. We want to start and stop the motors. These are our modes: angle, horizon, and ignore this one because it's not what we need. Say you only have arm and you don't have angle or horizon, or you can see it and it's grayed out. Just click on add range, and they will pop up and you can see them. And then you can modify them over here. Next over here, we have auxiliary 4, auxiliary 1, auxiliary 1. So use your down arrow and pick auxiliary 4, auxiliary 1, and auxiliary 1. And then over here, these yellow bars, you see these ones? You can move them. So make sure they look just like my screen. You can also lengthen them if you wish, but try to keep it like my screen. You see how this one is on top of this one's on top of this one. And then over here you have these little bars. See that tiny bar right there? And there's another tiny bar there and another tiny bar there. Those are the frequencies I was telling you about when I said -100, 0, +100, you know, as a fictitious type thing. So watch this on this one here where it says angle mode. I can make this bar move. Watch. So it's over here. I can make it go to the center. We'll say 0 and we'll say -100. Here they're using thousands, and then back to 0 and over there. So all that means is the position of my switch, wherever this big yellow bar is where it is going to be active. So when this little bar is here, there's nothing active here. When it's over here, there's nothing active. But over here, it's active, and it's active to say it's in angle mode. And down here for horizon, right there, it's in horizon mode. See how it comes to life? And then over here, it's nothing. So over on this side where I have nothing, that's acro mode. So at the very top, this bar up here is this, start, stop the motors. Next, this bar, and acro would be where it says normal. So at the top, that would be angle, that would be horizon mode, and that would be acro mode. Makes sense. Now I'll show you something very advanced. Don't goof this up. So let's look at our radio here and take a look at this. So this button over here, it's the opposite of the one that has writing on it. It's got nothing written on it. Say I want to make this button the beeper button, and I want to make it go beep when it's all the way to the top. I want the drone to beep. So all I have to do is look at my screen. So scroll down until you find beeper. Let's see, there's a beeper right here. Click on add range. There we go. Now over here, see where it says auto? This is where you would pick an auxiliary. I don't know what the switch is, so leave it on auto. Take this and then let's flick this switch so it's all the way up. And let's see what happened on our screen. And it also says auxiliary 2. So let me just show you. If I flick this switch, watch that move. See it move? There we go. So I want the beeper to be with the switch up like this. So in other words, let's see where the bar is. It's right there. So that means take the big bar and stick it on top of the little bar, and then go down here and hit save, and you're going to hear something. There we go. We just activated the beeper in here. So this beeper now functions. If I flick this, off, no beeper, and that's our beeper. Pretty simple, right? Off, no beeper. And if you want to see how I did the LEDs turning off and on, let's go down. You can see there's a user option down here, right here. I've already set it up. So you see I have a user 1, auxiliary 3, and I have the bar over here, and the little item is over there as well. And I've set that up to use this switch. So there's lights on, lights off. You see the bar move on the screen too? On, off, off. Pretty cool. Last thing to say on modes is everything you do will only be saved if you hit the save button. Where is it? Down here. Hit the save button. If you don't hit that save button, everything's lost. Last thing I want to show you is OSD right down here. So come and pick this one. This is the screen that you see in your goggles. This is what you see in your goggles. So here I see Cine Log 30, V3, low voltage. Over here is going to show me the voltage. I see a few other things. Anything you want to put on the screen, like up here, it's the mode you're flying in, angle. Anything you want to see on the screen, this is where you set it up. So if you look at the left-hand side of the screen here, you have 1, 2, 3. That's for 3 different OSD modes. Just use number 1 for now. All you do is put an X or a check mark in any one of these items along the side. There's a lot of them. Whatever one you check will appear on your OSD screen. So if you had a GPS in your drone, you could put GPS stats, your GPS speed, things like that, your home direction to see an arrow coming back home. And then when you add those items on your screen, they're just going to pop up at random all over your screen. You just have to click on them and move them around your screen. Like for here, see this voltage? Say I didn't want the voltage there. I want the voltage to be, I don't know, up over here. So I just lift it up and I put it up there. Let go, it's going to move up there. There we go. So it's up there on your screen. You have to remember to hit the save button. Okay, when you're all done, just hit disconnect and unplug your drone. Next thing I want to show you is in your goggles, make sure you turn on Canvas HD. I'll show you where that is. So on my little joystick, I'm going to pull it to the right. I'm going to go down to settings, display, canvas. You have a choice of normal or HD. Make sure you turn it on HD. If you turn it on HD, then you'll see all the OSD settings we set up. So I'm just going to move this camera out of the way. I'm not going to show you anything else on this BETAFLIGHT configurator software because it's extremely dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So I've only shown you the basics here, but that's enough to get you started. So there you go. I tried to keep it simple without going into too much detail that would confuse you. All I can say is do as I did and everything will work. Hopefully you have good luck and everything works. 90% of people that follow my videos, everything works perfect. So I hope you're one of the 90%. All right. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Once again, as I said, if you have questions, post your questions below. If you have problems, make sure you detail what your problem is by explaining exactly what you did and what is not working. So with all that said, I say thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you found it helpful. I will try to make more videos like this to help you out with different products in the future as time allows. But for now, I say bye.